Good morning.
Morning.
So you have the CAD incident messaging document, and basically I'm asking if you to adopt that to allow us to stop sending the feeds to individuals in the community that doesn't deserve to have it, doesn't have any right to have that data. So we're sending some data from the CAD that is pretty intense, and we need it for first responder awareness, but we don't need it sent to people that's outside of that sphere, the law enforcement and emergency first responders.
Okay, Shane, do you have any questions about that?
I don't. I mean, do they realize that this is happening?
There's been conversations between myself, several of the other entities, and I believe that the prosecutor's office has been involved in some of those things. So last year, I asked for an opinion from the prosecutor's office about it in March. We tried to do this on the technical side, so we wouldn't have to do administrative policy, and we can't do that without interfering with the operations for the police and fire departments.
Okay, so the prosecutor's office agrees with your assessment and says that in order to do so, we need to make an administrative policy change.
Correct.
Yeah, let me interject here and say, I would suggest that Gary share with you some examples of who has access so that you're in the know, and some of those are elected officials. So I want to make sure that you're in the know on some of the backstory on
Yep.
this.
Okay.
Can I interject one thing? The items that you received from me or Susan when it comes to CAD and hip leak, those are the sanitized versions of those. So when that comes to me and I forward it on, you as an elected official receive that, but that is the version that is not given out to first responders, that has a lot of personal information that is a part of that. That is what we're trying to curtail. That was what was getting into folks that are not first responders, and we want to make sure that we're addressing that. So there are some distinctions there, but we just want to make sure that we're protecting the privacy of those that are in an emergency situation.
And Gary, when you share those examples, be sure and explain whether those individuals are getting kind of like what Mark's talking about, a watered down version versus the full Monty.
Correct, they are not, they're getting everything. So they, we had township officials, council people have them, school administrators have those feeds. The concept was that they can know when there's a 911 event happening at the school or something like that. The school resource office gets the full feed, but those feeds have a lot of personal identifiable information in there, there's HIPAA data in there, some details when they first respond if a bad accident will be in there, because the dispatcher needs to fill that all out so that downstream everybody's getting those details. But
So let me just make sure I'm following you here. So there are two types of messages that go out. The one that we get as county commissioners is a quote sanitized version, meaning there is no personally identifiable information in it, therefore not at risk of a HIPAA violation or some other invasion of one's privacy.
Right.
There is also a list where a different message goes out that has all of the things in it, including personally identifiable information. And the administrative policy that you're bringing forward is trying to move some of those people who are getting all of the information, who don't need all of the information, and moving them from this class of getting it all to this class of getting the sort of a redacted version.
Not exactly, there's a distinction. There's only one feed that has everything. So when you get yours, it goes through a human filter. He doesn't get the full feed, so a human has to go through that. So those are very few incident types. Very few things you guys get like that versus somebody gets every call that comes in. So this is a very automated system. So that's the system we're talking about. There's nobody humanly adjudicating and redacting things to send out to the rest of those communities. It's all automated through the computer, so they're getting the full breadth of everything. You guys get something that gets filtered through the administrators.
So are you saying then that Martin gets the full feed and he,
Not typically.
so
So
who?
the dispatcher will make that because there's a criteria they get.
Okay, I'm still not understanding.
I'm
I
sorry.
understand what you're trying to do, but I'm not understanding what is current practice. So who sends Martin the text message?
Out of Melissa's operation, the dispatch supervisor does.
Okay, so somebody somewhere
Yeah,
in dispatch redacts personally identifiable information and sends that to whom?
yeah, they just type a summary and they send it out to him.
Okay, so is he the only person who gets that?
Yeah, Susan gets it, but for the details of that, I have to ask Melissa. I'm not sure exactly who all gets that piece. I just know it's not the automatic feed that we're talking about in this policy.
Okay, so what you're proposing then is for those who are getting the automatic feed to address the privacy concerns, that they get nothing?
Yes, ma'am.
And so why wouldn't we create for them, put them on the list, just like Martin, as an elected official, as a school superintendent, as
Yeah.
whomever?
We have an option to do that if we want to burden the cost of the time for the staff to build my staff can build a secondary feed just for that if you want it done. It would just be an additional cost and overhead for us.
Okay, so I guess we'll get into the scope, I guess, of understanding how many people are receiving personally identifying information who should not be getting personally identifying information, that will now get no information. What the burden is if somebody in the agency is already redacting the information and sending a message, like, is it thousands of people? Is it hundreds of people? Is it tens
No,
of
it's
people?
not. The issue you'll have with that is that they don't get all the incidents. Because they only give you guys things that hit a certain scale. Currently, they get every incident that happens at that address, like a school, inside their township or city. They're
So
getting
it's
it all.
discerning what political jurisdiction needs to get the council members in this community. It's now putting that in.
Yeah.
Some human has to make that
It
discernment.
delays the reaction time, et cetera.
And so your point is, they really shouldn't have been getting the information in the first place, that in either event, there is this personally identifying information for which we cannot be sharing as broadly as we do, and we need to pull that back. And
They have options. Their police and fire chiefs can pull the reports and give them weekly reports of activity reports, however they want to do that. There's other options, they don't have to get it in real time.
but they're not responding to an emergency. These are not people who are responding to the emergency. They're people like us, that when there's something that reaches a certain threshold, we acknowledge it's happening in the community, but we aren't first responders in that
Correct.
instance. Okay, so can you then provide me with some examples around, like, who are we talking about here that's gonna move from, you're saying city council members, you're saying who else?
So it's any council, village, government officials that are not responders, and I identified those by ORC in the policy. And then anybody else that have, like, school administrators, they have SROs, those are law enforcement, the school resource officers, so that doesn't change for them, they still get the full feed. So practically, those are the kind of people that we're talking about, just anybody doesn't.
So
meet that
the
requirement.
SRO, for example, they're gonna get the full
Yep.
thing, and then the SRO could conceivably in real time do what our staff does, redact it down and send it to us for our awareness if it reaches some sort of threshold.
Good, yes,
So a police chief could do that, could look at that and say, you know what, this is something council needs to know about right away, redact the information and send it to council.
exactly. And that's basically what the policy gives, that responsibility to them to decide how they're using information, because we can't, once we send it to them, there's no way to police what they're using it for or who they share it with.
And then so basically, we're saying, we're gonna take responsibility for not violating the law in sharing personally identifying information, perhaps HIPAA violations, with people who shouldn't get access to that information. But once you share it with the people who are first responders, then it's on them to protect the individual's personally identifying information and expose themselves to whatever the consequences could be
That is
of
correct.
violating HIPAA. Okay,
I just wanted to make sure that if you got a call from a township trustee, because some of the trustees historically have had access to it, or one of these other officials that Gary mentions, and ask you about it, you understood what this policy
Yeah.
is doing, because it is changing something they have had access to.
Yeah.
They probably should not have,
Yes.
obviously, but they have, and they're gonna have that taken away from them. So if you get that call or that email, or you run into them somewhere, I want you to be up to speed on all.
yeah. I mean, I certainly understand that, but as technology evolves and the importance of privacy and protecting private health information, you know, we gotta follow the law. So I don't have a problem with this, especially since those township trustees, there are people in their political jurisdiction that cover that political jurisdiction, are getting access to the information, and they can have a conversation with those folks about what information can they legally get from it. So it may be a police chief, it could be a fire chief, it could be some other authority that is able to get that information. They can work with them on that redaction and timeliness of that information.
Absolutely.
Okay.
One last thing, I think you've seen a copy of the policy, and I made one 11th hour edit to it at the very end, just striking the word administrator, where it says.
You're on the
sign
backside.
below. Backside, right above signatures, it says city, village, township administrator. And I just explained to Gary that not all of those jurisdictions.
Have administrator, so we'll strike out the word administrator.
Yeah, and I just put, just as a suggestion, chief administrative official. So whether it's a manager, Waynesville example is a town, is a village, but they call their administrator the manager.
Yeah.
So you call it chief, what are you calling it?
Just chief administrative official.
Okay. Is this a document that we are authorizing that?
A change in
Yes.
administrative
Yeah,
policy.
I know that, but I'm asking who signs this document?
They do. Anybody that has access to it is gonna be signing this.
Okay, very good. Do we have to have a resolution to?
Yes, we'll have a resolution implementing the CAD incident messaging feed policy effective February 6th, 2024.
So moved?
Yes. Should we call a roll on that first?
Yes.
Mr. Grossman?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You.
All right, so the next agenda item is with our general manager of Miami Conservancy District.
Good morning, Commissioners. Can you hear me okay? Is the microphone okay?
Good morning.
Very well.
Great. Well, thank you again. I'm sorry I didn't have this popped up correctly. Where is she? Okay. So again, thank you very much for coming. Can you see my slides up there?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Oh, wait a
No,
second. It's not up
yeah,
there.
now we can.
Okay, great. So yes, my name is Mary Lynn Loader. I'm the.
No, I can't.
Can you see me?
Thank you.
I'm the general manager of the Miami Conservancy District, and the Miami Conservancy District is a subdivision of the state of Ohio that was formed out of the Great Flood of 1913. And so our primary mission is flood protection along the Great Miami River. Warren County is one county of 5 total that are protected by the Miami Conservancy District, with property totaling about $415 million of property value that's protected in the cities and townships on the western edge of Warren County. And I'm going to get into that a little bit, but just a little bit of background, a little bit deeper, I guess, for background in terms of what we do. I mentioned flood protection is our primary mission, but we have other missions as well as it relates to water stewardship, aquifer protection of the Great Miami Buried Valley Aquifer System that many, over 1 million people rely on for groundwater. And then we also have a River Corridor Improvement Subdistrict, which is a district that we have that maintains and provides recreational assets along the Great Miami River. Specifically, we have 99 miles of bike trails along the Great Miami River. We actually maintain about 35 miles of those. So first of all, the main district that we have, and I apologize, I hope on your screen you can see the visuals a little bit better. You do have a PDF of these slides as well, and so if these images are not coming through well, you'll be able to see them. And I do have packets as well for you that I can leave with you with some of these materials.
It's in our materials already, isn't it?
Yes, do you have packets?
Yeah, we do.
They have that.
Okay, great. So I did try to scale these slides down. This is actually a fact sheet, and I'll leave that in the packet for you. Ultimately, we have the flood protection system is funded by individual property owners that receive protection from the integrated flood protection system, as well as units of government that have property within their jurisdictions that are protected. Over the last 100 years, our flood protection system has stored water over 2,000 times in our upstream of our dams, and that system of the flood protection system is over 100 years old. It's well beyond its useful life, but it's in fairly good shape, but we need to make some improvements to it over the next several years. Also, over the last several decades, the amount of flood water that system has had to store has increased over 228%. We do have also about $80 million worth of prioritized capital needs that we've identified for the flood protection system, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. But specifically, there's, like just in our last March, we had a high water event, a lot of water, a lot of rainfall that we need to store behind our dams. And the Germantown Dam, we actually lost part of the wall of the Germantown Dam. So we are working to also get some other resources to take care of those kinds of issues. This is just a slide that breaks down the Aquifer Protection Subdistrict a little bit more and the recreational subdistrict, but I really want to focus on our flood protection system. So as it relates to that, I have just a quick video that is 90 seconds about, and kind of gives you a good snapshot of the flood protection system.
In 1913, our region endured catastrophic flooding, with water rising to 20 feet, washing away homes and businesses. To prevent such tragedy, the Miami Conservancy District built a world-class flood protection system, designed by local leaders and constructed with local funds, safeguarding families from the fury of rising rivers. While other cities fear flooding and face destruction, our communities thrive along the river. For over 100 years, the system of dams, storage basins, and levees has offered unparalleled protection, stopping floodwaters more than 2,100 times. But the impacts from weather trends and aging infrastructure are increasing destructive flood events across the U.S. We are not immune to this fate. The number of times the Miami Conservancy District system has prevented flooding has increased more than 200% in recent decades. These extreme conditions cause added stress and maintenance needs. The flood protection system now requires crucial repair, reinvestment, and rehabilitation. After the devastating Great Flood, people came together in an unmatched show of community spirit to build the flood protection system with the promise, never again. To keep that promise, the mission of the Miami Conservancy District is critical to the region's safety and quality of life.
And so what's protected by the Miami Conservancy, not just...
This is the
Oh,
SF1.
dear.
It's the first ever slice fixing driver built specifically for amateurs that give,
Just close that.
Is that a different program?
We can get the golfing program.
More on that later. So what's protected by the Miami Conservancy District? It's not just Warren County, but it's, Montgomery County, Butler County, Miami County are the three most populated counties that are protected within the district in the Great Miami River watershed. And then also Hamilton County is the fifth county. So we've got Miami, Montgomery, Butler, Warren, and Hamilton counties that are all protected, totaling over 1 million people. We have over 47,000 properties that are protected, about 32, I believe, and I think there's a slide here in just a little bit, about 3,200 properties are protected within Warren County. That makes up about 7% of those 47,000 properties is how that works out. And totaling over $10 billion worth of buildings and land, 11 hospitals, 60 schools, hundreds of miles of roadways, wastewater treatment plants, et cetera. There's a lot of value protected. In terms of how we do that, we have 5 large dry dams. Those dams that you saw on the video are those 100-year-old dams, dry dams that were constructed as part of this integrated flood protection system. We also have 55 miles of levees. Those are levees along the Great Miami River that hold the water within the banks of the river. And then many communities also utilize that levee system for utilities or pipe network and whatnot to get either effluent discharges from treatment plants or stormwater discharges to the Great Miami River. Those openings also present a risk and a challenge to the levee system because as they age and crack, then if water gets in there, it could present a levee failure. So those are that's some of the work that we need to do to ensure that is free from risk or at least mitigated. We also have about 1,100 acres of floodplain and then 35,000 acres of storage basins we have upstream of each of those dams. We own the flooding rights on those, on that land of 35,000 acres that we acquired back in when the system was designed and constructed. And today we still kind of monitor those lands to ensure that we are able to maintain our flooding capacity behind those dams. And then we have improved channels throughout. So as you can see here, this visual is showing the green areas are those dams. The areas that we have with you might be able to see some red there, those are where we have levees. And so we have different levels of protection up and down the river based on whether we have levees or whether those areas are just protected by the upstream dams. So we have made several investments over the last 20 years. In fact, we've invested almost just over $25 million actually through a dam safety improvement initiative that we have. It was a capital assessment that was established in 1999, and that actually expired in 2022. So we don't have a stream of revenue to address the ongoing identified capital needs throughout the system.
So what was, I'm sorry, what was that revenue stream?
That was called, it was a capital assessment. It was called the Dam Safety Initiative.
And who was assessed it?
The same properties that are protected by the Miami Conservancy District are assessed first for our maintenance assessment, the dollars that we need to be able to maintain the levees and the dams. In '99, the Conservancy Court established a capital assessment for the same entities that are benefiting from the flood protection system. They were also assessed a capital assessment.
How do they get assessed this? In their
I'm sorry?
property taxes, real estate taxes?
It is assessed, so as a subdivision of the state of Ohio and as a conservancy district, there is a section of Ohio law called conservancy districts, and each conservancy district has to have a conservancy court, and a court has established from 100 years ago, and each county that is part of the Miami Conservancy District, there's actually 9 counties that are part of the district, and each county appoints a judge from the Court of Common Pleas to serve on the Conservancy Court.
Yeah, but how do you get assessed to the public? So you're telling me that there's people that are being protected along rivers or whatever, and they're being assessed something, you send them a notice in the mail and say, here's what you owe, or how do you do this?
Yes, so every time that we go through a readjustment of an appraisal of benefits, I'm going to get into that just a little bit because we're in the process of going through a readjustment of that. Right now, we're utilizing our 6th appraised benefits that were appraised back in 2012. And so currently, we are assessing property owners based on 2012 property values.
So it's a property tax.
It's on the tax bill.
That's all I'm
Correct.
asking.
Yeah.
That's what you're asking, but I'll also share with you that that includes us. There is not an exemption for a governmental entity. A number of years ago, Judge Fetters was the judge on the Common Pleas Court in Warren County and we sought a declaratory judgment whether we were exempt. and he made a decision that we were not. So we have some parcels that have governmental public uses that we're not exempt, and we have to pay this assessment.
Is this based on a millage rate?
It is not based on the millage rate. It's
So what you do is you tell the auditor that here's how much we have to raise, here's how much is assessed to each property owner, and then that gets on the tax bill that is collected by the treasurer, and that's how it works?
correct, yes.
Okay, and how many people are affected by this? How many property owners?
Approximately 3,200 in Warren County, in Franklin, Carlisle, and then the unincorporated.
And do you then have a total dollar amount that you determine is their share, and they are then assessed it based upon their property value, or based upon it's equivalent? One person gets one assessment, everybody pays the equal amount.
So it's actually based on, property value is one of the factors that it's based on. It's also based on how that property is protected by the Miami Conservancy District.
How do you make that subjective determination?
Show us
So-
some slides that show that.
What?
Show us some slides that shows that.
Yeah, I do, real short.
That's coming.
It is, yeah,
It's
it's
a coming attraction?
coming traction, right, exactly.
Stay tuned.
But
All right,
just
well,
a little nugget to answer that right now.
I'm here for you.
Yeah,
Go,
so it's
explain.
based on essentially how significant the floodwater impacted each property in the whole watershed that is now protected, because the 1913 storm event was used as the design storm that we built protection for. And so we have historical records, thousands of surveys that were done at that time, and we know how deep and extent the flooding was then. And that's part of the calculation too.
Okay, all right. Carry forward.
Okay. So again, you can't see all of these very well, but the one that you can see is right in the center there. That's the Germantown Dam, where we lost part of the wall in March of 2023. We also have a lot of tracked pipe conduits going through the levees that either cities or municipalities, even counties, are using to get their stormwater, wastewater discharges, or other utilities through the levee system. So in total, we've identified about $140 million. However, we know that we will need to take more of a measured approach and develop more of a phased implementation plan with addressing these issues. But with the expiration of the capital assessment, we don't have an incoming stream to address these. We're also looking to try to secure both state and federal sources of revenue to be able to reduce the burden on local unit and individual property owners. So here I wanted to just share a little bit in terms of how we are funded. Because again, I've been at the Conservancy District now for just under 2 years, and that seemed to be the biggest mystery, not only for me coming in, but the jurisdictions and the entities that are protected by the Conservancy District. So how we're funded is through two things: individual assessments to properties that benefit from the district based on how they were flooded in 1913 and how they are now protected by the assets we have. Second is local or unit assessments. So the units of government that have overall land within the protected area, and they're getting a benefit because they don't have to necessarily worry about flooded streets, emergency services, and can enjoy economic development along areas that previously would have been underwater. So here's just an illustration of the blue and the peach on the screen here is showing you the areas of protection that we have identified within our flood protection area. And so I'm showing kind of the methodology and the benefit of how we calculate.
Is this in Warren County?
This is in Warren County, yes. I'm actually zoomed into Franklin and Carlisle and unincorporated areas of Warren County. And so parts of Franklin have what we call full protection. That's the peach area on the map. The area that's in blue is considered partial protection. The reason why that's significant is, again, it's part of the benefit calculation, which turns into the assessment amount that each one is charged. And so if you are protected by both a levee, which is an embankment along the river that's holding that water back, and again, the system was designed for the 1913 storm, and just as a sidebar, I should mention that We have not experienced an event like the 1913. It was so incredibly significant that fortunately, we have this very conservatively designed system that can address that. We've only had one event that, well, it didn't even come close to it. It was 1959, and it was probably about half the size of the 1913 event. So we're very fortunate, I should say, that we have a system like this that was built so conservatively to be able to protect such a large storm event. And so those levees that we
So,
have.
can I just
Yes.
clarify here? So, are you saying we haven't had the storm event that equaled 1913? Or are you saying that we may have had the same level of storm, but the system was built so conservatively that it was able to hold off that kind of water?
Yeah, we have not had the same level of intensity of rainfall as was experienced with all the conditions that were present at that time. And so it was a much higher storm. Like you hear a lot about 100-year storms, 500-year storms. This one is very hard to pin down like what level it was, but it was probably over 1,000-year storm. It was, in fact, engineers tell me it could be more like a 3,000 or a 5,000-year storm. So it's very significant, but it happened once, and fortunately, and that wasn't the first event that the region experienced. It was just the monster one that was experienced over
So
years.
this is a lot of rainfall in a short period of time.
Yes,
All
yes.
right, and it happens during what, the spring usually?
It was, yeah, in March, actually, of 2000, or 1913.
Okay.
Yes, right around Easter.
And we've never had anything quite that significant since then.
Right,
But you've got protection that would actually protect from that level of storm.
correct.
That's what you're telling us.
That's what I'm telling you. But that system is now 100 years old,
Okay, and you're improving it now.
and we're improving it, but we are seeing more frequent lower frequency storms, and that's making our dams and levees work harder because they're wet more than they were in the first
Oh, and
half.
you're correcting, you showed slides where you were losing parts of that. And you're
Correct.
making
And that's a
modifications
concern.
and corrections to that. You're
Yes.
repairing that.
Yeah, we're trying to, but that's why we are gonna need a new capital assessment to be able to address that.
Okay, and that's being assessed by property value and level of coverage, some sort of standard you use for that.
Correct.
And then you give everybody an assessment that you give to the auditor to put on his tax bill.
But this court approves it.
The court has to approve the rate, correct. If they approve the capital assessment first, they have to do that. In fact, we have a meeting coming up later this week.
Okay, I don't understand the rate. What do you mean the court has to approve the rate?
The court has to first give us the authority to establish a capital assessment. And then in July, every year, the court meets to hear the condition, the status of the Conservancy District, as well as a report of the chief engineer. And then at that point, every year, the court then sets the rate.
So I don't understand this court thing. Let
Yep.
me ask you this. This isn't like a legal judge, is it?
It is.
It is.
It is, and is
Judge
this-
Peeler
Judge
from
Peeler
Warren
is
County.
the assigned court judge?
Correct, yes.
How did Judge Peeler get that pleasure?
That determination is typically made by the court administration. I think the judges amongst themselves in that
So the
particular county.
administrative judge or the judges amongst themselves decide which one gets this responsibility?
It's my
Yes?
understanding, thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
And so.
And is that, by the way, is that is notice given to everybody that is affected by this, or be assessed this, that there's gonna be a hearing on this, that they all be
Yes,
present?
and in fact, I think I'm leading up to perhaps some around that. We're gonna actually be sending out public notices on March 22nd thereabouts with regards to the update, because as I said, we are currently assessing the property owners based on a number of different factors, the flood factors that we talked about, as well as property values.
So
We
how
are,
much, give me an example, how much money does somebody pay for this?
yeah, I have the
I mean,
coming attraction.
individual property.
Individual, it varies. Typically, right now, there's, just for maintenance alone, right now, based on 2012 property values. Again, I want to make sure that we understand that we are currently collecting and assessing properties based on 2012 property values, and a lot has changed since then. So that's,
So do we periodically update that?
yes.
How often, what do you do it, every 10 years? Or no?
We're not authorized to do it any more frequently than every 6 years, but we're in the process of doing that right now.
Okay,
And
so now, to give me an example, how much does a property owner pay for this?
Yep,
Give me
so.
a range.
Oh, so about 90% of property owners right now, based on the sixth readjustment, are paying less than $250 a year.
Okay, so then a half that would be paying less than
Yeah, and I've got a pie chart that'll show you that.
$5. Okay, well, that's not insignificant, go ahead.
Right, right.
Or they could flood.
Well, one of the questions that I posed when we had a conversation is that, and please correct me if I'm mistaken, if I'm speaking on this, is that there are folks that receive this protection to scenarios, various levels, and have that assessment that is charged to them. But the counter to that is that they do not have to have FEMA insurance or have FEMA insurance at a reduced rate.
Correct.
So this is an offset. It is either a complete wipeout or an offset to having flood insurance.
That's correct.
Based off where they live. So they probably would be spending this to some capacity. It just depends on
Yeah.
how that interacts.
Yeah, and
with
it's a difference between this is protection as opposed to that is damage recovery. And the average US cost for flood insurance is about $900 for a residential property.
So are you showing us properties that are protected here?
So what I'm showing you now is that through the Ohio Revised Code, there's a process that allows the Conservancy Court to go through a readjustment of appraised benefits. And so the Conservancy Court authorized and ordered the readjustment of benefits in 2020 because it was determined a material change in property value as well as condition. And so what you can see on some of these slides here are in 2012, there wasn't the Kettering Hospital in Troy, or there wasn't Children's Medical Center in Dayton. So we're currently assessing them as if it was still a vacant lot or a dilapidated building, whereas now it's actually getting flood protection and able to develop right along the
Right.
river.
I get that. Does that mean that by reassessing it and charging these people, that lowers the burden on other people?
More equitably distributes.
What I mean is that when you have improvements to property and now the improvement means that they're gonna be paying more, does that mean, generally speaking, that everybody else is gonna be paying less?
I can't say generally that everybody's gonna be paying less, no, but there will be more
Well,
equitable.
the absolute
distribution.
number of amount that you're collecting is going up, is that right?
Yes, we have to collect more because we also are not able to do a readjustment any more frequently than every 6 years. So we need to estimate what the revenue requirements are for typically about an 8-year period.
Do you collect an absolute amount and then there's an assessment that's put on the property that's appraised at a certain value so that you determine what each property pays for, and then that absolute amount can increase by having another court, decision? Is that how that happens?
It could, but we try to set the rate so that we don't have to make it a.
Isn't the rate supposed to collect an absolute amount? Like, okay, I need to have $5 million every year. Is that what's going on?
Yes, that is what happens.
Okay, so every 6 years, you might change that absolute amount.
Yes, but it's been 12 since we did it last
Okay,
time.
I'm just trying to figure it out.
Yep.
So now you're gonna be reassessing the absolute amount to raise the absolute amount, but you're also changing the improvement, the property is gonna be affected. And so with the increase in the amount you need, plus the improvement value, it may mean that some people's amounts they're paying goes down.
It would, however, to the second bullet there, we were supposed to do the readjustment in 2020, and that was delayed because Butler County was appealing their property values to the state. As a result of that, we've had to utilize.
Butler County, its own property value.
Its own property, nothing to do with the Conservancy District.
And we were never doing that, right? No. Okay, all right.
Yep, so our readjustment was delayed by 3 years, so we've had to utilize our cash reserves to hold off and wait until.
Well, that's
this guy-
interesting. What are your cash reserves?
So by our financial policy is that they are one half of all of the one half of the assessments that we collect.
Well, I'm actually asking what your actual reserve is, not the minimum.
Yeah, so about $6 million.
That's your reserve, okay. And what's your total spend a year?
Total spend a year right now is closer to about $9 million.
So you don't have enough for 1 year spend, but you got a substantial amount in reserve.
correct. But again, we've been dipping into that and
Yep, I
as we
getcha.
go forward, yep.
Okay, very good.
And so we also have a board of appraisers, and they're professionals within the field of either real estate or appraisal areas, and they actually kind of vet the methodology that we use with regards to the property values and what the depth of flooding was, and they ultimately need to submit a certified record of appraisals to, that's what we're gonna be using for public notice on March 22nd. And so we're anticipating that we will public notice that for 30 days. We're also gonna be having some public hearings. This is just an illustration of like the next 6 months. So later this week, we have a Conservancy Court meeting to consider the capital assessment with the court, and the 22nd we'll have the public notice. We will also have a process for, it's called exceptions. In state law, we have, it's outlined how a property owner can essentially appeal their benefit, and those are also outlined in state law. We will have a website where a property owner can put their name, address, or parcel ID to see what their updated benefit is and what their updated maintenance assessment is, and then if the court chooses to proceed with a capital assessment, then we would also have that anticipated capital assessment online as well for properties to see within this window of time.
So when they get their tax bill, is that all broken out there?
It is, yes. It says MCD flood maintenance, MCD capital is what it would say. So again, we have some open houses. One that I don't have on here, and I should have added it, was in the city of Hamilton. We're anticipating one at the end of February. They wanted to do it before the public hearing, and then we have two, one in Troy and one in Dayton in April. That'll be just after.
When you have these open houses, are you covering your entire conservatory district, or are you just covering that area that's within that jurisdiction?
No, it's within that whole area. Or
So-
within, anyone could go to any
Your
one
entire,
of
so
these.
that meeting in Hamilton will cover what you're doing in Warren County?
Correct,
Because it's district-wide?
correct,
So
yes,
it's multi-jurisdictional?
correct.
Okay.
Because in addition
So
to
if
the
our
five.
people want to know about this, they got to go to those meetings?
Yes,
some
and
other
we
jurisdiction.
have information already on our website, and again, I've been going to Rotaries, the Chamber of Commerce's, county commissioners, city council meetings, trying to, help people understand what this is, and again, able to come.
When's the last time you were in front of us?
Well, I've never
She's
been
only
in
been
front of
here
you,
2
actually. I've
years.
Oh,
only-
I know that, but
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking about the organization.
I'm gonna say, I'll have to, I don't know that precisely. I met with the county administrator, your former county administrator last year.
I'm not talking about you, I'm just talking about
Yeah.
in general your organization.
Water and Sewer Department, and we discussed it last, is that we think it was probably about 6 or 7 years ago. We know it was prior to COVID, but we were trying to guess it was about 6 or 7 years ago.
I can't-
That
I
would
do
be
not-
consistent with their sexannual update that she just mentioned.
Okay, I just don't remember.
Yeah, and I really do want to make ourselves, the district more visible, and, if you have questions.
No, I appreciate it. I mean, your $250 for a lot of people is significant enough so that we need to know about it.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
understand.
yeah. And so then after the exceptions, then there's going to be a court-appointed magistrate to hear the hearings, to review the hearings, to then make a recommendation and a report to the Conservancy Court on any exceptions, and
Really, what magistrate is that?
The Conservancy Court establishes, the presiding judge has been given the authority by the court to establish
Is there a judge in each county over this, or is just one judge for the entire territory?
it really depends how many exceptions are filed. Our last time that we went through this in the 6th readjustment, it was one judge who was appointed. It was a former Conservancy Court judge who was familiar with the flood protection system.
Okay.
And so once the magistrate reviews, then they'll submit their report. The court is scheduled to meet, is tentatively scheduled to meet at the end of July of this year. So here's some preliminary findings with regards to our analysis. So again, I apologize that the visual doesn't show up here. Again, that's just showing those peach areas, the blue areas of flood protection, and partial protection. So these are 3 examples of those 3 different kinds of flood protection that are currently being provided by our flood protection system. So these first 2 that we have on this screen is a property that is fully protected. They're like behind a levee in a city. And the only difference for them, because both of them are $100,000 property, the primary difference is the depth of flooding that this property experienced in 1913 and how they're now protected by the Conservancy District. So the top one had 10 feet of water on top of it and now is dry because of the flood protection system. So they're looking at, for their maintenance assessment, a $62 a year increase. Whereas for a capital, if a capital assessment is approved at 1%, they're looking at about $105. So overall, that's about $33 a month in total for flood protection, because again, they had 10 feet of water on them in the 1913 flood, and now we have protection to make sure that doesn't happen. The second example is there was only a half a foot of water on that property, and so they're looking at about a $12 a year increase, or $22 a year for a capital assessment. Any questions before I move on to a partial protected? So partial protected, again, would be in those blue areas on the map, so they're only protected by dams. There's no levee protecting them, but it's still substantial protection, but we call it partial protection because they don't have that levee there. So they're looking at about $7 a year increase on a $100,000 property that's partially protected, or $10 a year for a capital assessment, for a total of about $3 a month in full. Okay, before I go on to units, do you have questions about individual properties? Okay. So units are for those public corporations. There's a beautiful picture of downtown Franklin along the Great Miami River. They got wonderful things happening in downtown Franklin, and again, they had several feet of water on them in 1913. And local governments, as your prosecutor mentioned, are exempt. Their properties are exempt from individual assessments by state law. So as a result, the methodology calculates a benefit for units of government based on the fact that you still have, your jurisdiction is protected in certain areas of your county. And so as a result, those areas within the city or the counties, you pay a portion of those. Your assessment is based on a portion of those benefits in either cities or counties, and then we use that to then multiply it by the rate to get what your assessment is. And because your county can then have uninterrupted services to be able to continue about your life during wet weather, when otherwise those areas would be flooded, and enhanced economic development along those areas, and overall just reduced risk. So I put together a slide that just shows what the assessment result, if the 7th readjustment proceeds, and with a slight increase in the maintenance assessment, how that would play out for Warren County. So you currently pay about $34,000 a year for flood protection maintenance, and that's projected to go up to about $52,000. Again, these are preliminary assessments, and I just wanted to be able to share some of the ballpark numbers with you. In terms of a capital assessment, as I mentioned, we don't have one right now, so you're not paying a capital assessment. But if we do proceed with a 1%, that would be about $20,000 a year for flood protection.
Wait, I didn't understand that. You get $20,000 a year of annual flood protection. That's some sort of insurance policy? What is this?
No, so remember I mentioned the walls of the dams are falling off?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're gonna develop a capital program to actually design and construct improvements that will shore up those assets so that
the cost of $20,000 only?
Well, you plus 4 other counties and 21 other communities.
Okay.
All pay a unit assessment, and then
So
all of.
This is the county's assessment?
This is just Warren County, would get this on Warren County's tax bill.
Is that $20,000 from us or all the counties together?
No, it's all based on what
No, who pays the $20,000?
Warren County.
Okay, that's what I wanted to understand.
Yep, Warren County does. But, and each county gets a different unit assessment based on what property is protected in their county. Warren County only has 20 or 32 600 parcels that are protected in either Franklin or Carlisle or unincorporated areas of the
That
county.
includes all the property, not merely county property, but all the property, is that right?
This is based on all of the properties that are protected within Warren County.
It's not just the public's property, it's everybody's property. And we're paying the 20,000 for everybody.
But as a unit assessment, and then individual properties pay for their individual
Okay,
benefit.
but we pay an extra amount because,
Because your utilities are not flooded, your streets are not flooded, you're able to economically develop around those areas and get value from flood protection. It's not just an individual benefit, it's also a local government benefit as well.
so you're charging individuals that get this protection, all of them, including us, and then on top of that, you're charging us this $20,000.
No, Warren County's parcels are exempt.
I thought we were told they weren't exempt.
You are exempt from individual assessments, you're not exempt from unit assessments.
It's like an alternative methodology, because we are exempt from the property tax. They created these units based on the formula about what properties we have there and stuff, and that is an alternative for political subdivisions.
And this is the way it has been assessed when the Conservancy District was set up. So generally, right now, about 65% of the assessments we have coming in are from individual properties, and then 35% is coming from unit assessments like.
And what do we pay now?
Currently, right now, Warren County is paying about $34,000 a year. And so that's projected to go up to $52,000 with the readjustment and updated projected rate.
Then is the 20,000 in addition to that, the flood protection capital assessment?
That would be a separate assessment to be
That's not
just,
part, and we're not paying that right now.
that's correct,
Okay, good enough.
Yep.
Great. So now the total amount we're gonna be spending
about 72,000.
is 52,000 plus the 20,000
That's correct,
every year.
correct.
Okay.
Yep,
I'm looking at one, for example, I knew Katie had her computer and I can look one up. Property on Robinsonville Road, that's Water Department. Our assessment, and I'm looking at current, our assessment for it for the full year is over $80,000.
Just for that one
parcel. And I think we have a couple, and the other one's a small one. But this is the one that I recall that was so enormous.
Why is it so enormous?
I don't know the answer to that, other than it's consistently been.
Is that just the maintenance assessment, or does that include capital too?
Let me see if I can figure that out.
so you're looking at a public parcel,
Correct, in the name of Warren County as a political subdivision. It's on Robinsonville Road, that's the Water Department's parcel. It's count number 1433717. We are exempt from taxation on it, but we pay the special assessments, and it's $40,771.66 per half. And that's for the 2023 tax year.
How much acreage is this, Bruce?
Let me see, it doesn't list it because it's exempt.
And this is this part of our,
This- because it shows 0 acreage, I'd have to ask Matt how this is set up. See if I can find it in the memos.
so is it, and this is, what do we use the property for again?
It could be some sort of overall assessment as opposed to a parcel assessment.
yeah, so typically, and we can follow up
Well,
on
no,
this.
but no, are companies paying that kind of amount of money?
It depends, let's see, I think
So I was asking you before what the range was, and $250,
Yeah.
I thought it was okay, but $80,000, now that's substantial money. So some other people are paying that kind of amount, or do we get the special, do we get the special program here as being in the county?
Special assessments. It's Matt's category for it is 9900 Miami Conservancy District.
Yeah, I was just looking, I think in your slide, in your packet, you have a, you should have a slide that has like a big pie chart on it. For some reason, it's not in here. And that is a breakdown of the, that has a breakdown of all of the assessments on average, and there's approximately about 90% of all assessments when we look at both the capital and the projected
That's
maintenance.
this?
Yes, you got it. And so that shows a breakdown. Generally, that average, those do kind of comport against all of the counties. And so that's a breakdown. You can see that 90% of them with capital as well as maintenance are less than, I think, $340 a year. And you can kind of see the breakdown then by, I think,
Per 100,000 of assessment.
That's actually not, that's for all of them. Yep, that's all of the 47,000 properties are protected. However, some of those are exempt, so we have 42,000 that are actually paying an assessment.
Do I have a particular piece of property that I'm paying $80,000 on, or is that all of our property?
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
It seems like
I'd
if
need
I
to-
got one piece of property and I'm paying $80,000.
We don't, yeah, I really don't,
Well, can you
know
find
what
that out
special
for us?
assessment that
I'm
is.
curious, you don't have to do that today.
yeah, that could be a different assessment.
Just-
There's
Think
two
about it.
assessments. One is called the Miami Conservancy District Assessment, and the other one's called the Groundwater Assessment.
Yes, so the groundwater one is the aquifer protection sub-district.
And the county is paying that for the entire county.
That should be the case, yes, but I want to look at
We'll
that.
double check that and get back to us.
Yep.
on it. All right, thanks. You just move on.
And do you have a parcel ID on that or something?
Yes,
Or you
I'll
can-
give it to you
okay.
afterwards, you finish your presentation.
That's great, thanks.
Okay. So just in wrap up, so we are, trying to reduce the local burden. We are trying to identify both state and federal resources. We do currently have a request to the state capital bill for about $10 million to do upstream wall repairs on Germantown, Englewood, and Taylorsville dams. We're also working through Congressman Turner's office to try to secure funding through the Water Resources Development Act, which could also help to get some funding through the bipartisan infrastructure bill, and also utilizing low-interest loans through Ohio Water Development Authority. We just secured a loan at just about 3% to do a repair of our Lockington Dam. So that dam actually has had 3 of its walls replaced. Also, as your administrator mentioned, we also looked at flood protection insurance rates and what those are. And generally, our flood protection system does help reduce or eliminate the need for flood insurance for many of the properties that we protect. And as I mentioned, the average premium in the U.S. for a residential property is about $900 for flood protection. And again, that is for after an event. That really doesn't provide protection. That provides damage recovery, as opposed to what our assets do is protect against flood damage. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Well, I've been asking my questions throughout, so I don't have any.
Appreciate you being here.
Thank
Okay,
you so much.
great. Thank you very much. And I'll get that information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we move on to and we're back almost right on the agenda time. So we've got our president of Spryrex Communications to discuss placement of radio antenna to existing tower. Come ahead. Bill Spry, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Good morning. And first, I want to thank you all for getting me in here so quickly. I am president of Spryrex Communication. Hi, Crystal. It's good to meet you.
Nice meeting you.
We've been a nonprofit organization in Ohio since 1999. We hold the license for 3 different radio stations in the area. One in Hamilton County, one in Butler County. We just bought a station in Hamilton County, or I'm sorry, Butler, in Hamilton.
So Your radio station on what channel?
Well, there are different channels. The one in Warren County is on 89.1. Hamilton County is 88.9, and in Butler County it's 89.5.
That's an FM station?
I'm sorry?
That's FM station?
Yes, FMs. Uh-huh.
Okay.
And currently, we got the license for the one in Warren County, I think it was like 2011 or 12, something like that. And we built it, it was low power, it was only 190 watts at that time. And we were in Waynesville. Long story, we lost the site where the antenna was. So we were like in emergency mode to try to get it back on the air because we had to pull it off the air. And Roy Miller was kind enough to let us put an antenna on his one of his silos. So that's where it's at right now. And it's been there for a while, but it affects our signal.
But you want to get in a different location?
Yeah, we're just not covering the county
Is this
like,
why you're here today?
yes, yes,
You want to get on a location
yes.
from us?
Yeah, I'd spoken with Gordon, I've known Gordon since the 90s. And he told me that there could be a possibility that maybe we could utilize one of your towers or water towers, if we could.
Do you have a specific location you have in mind?
No, it's really technical. What we would have to do would be to look at each location that you would consider us using, get the coordinates, the GPS coordinates, and then I'd send it off to my engineer in Texas, and he would analyze each location to see which one would be the best location for our signal.
Who would you be sent to in our,
I'm sure
who would
Telecom.
we go to? I mean, I'm not sure, we've got all, do we have any towers?
Well, I sort of remember we had one exception for a ham radio operator that had been operating. Am I remembering this right, Bruce?
Yes.
And we allowed that exception. Because I think of the longevity and sort of the redundancy perhaps in a case of an emergency, that there's a, ham operator network that could support sort of backup to our own redundant 911 or other emergency protocol. So I guess my question is, if I'm remembering that correctly, is around the commercialization of that as opposed to a non-commercial entity, and putting commercialized assets with, on our cell towers or other infrastructure, because I know we do that with some of the like cell phone providers or others who want to put on the cell towers. So I guess I'm trying to understand if your request falls into one of those categories in which we have already approved or in contract, or if this is creating a new sort of category of usage.
Mhm. We are licensed by the FCC as a non-commercial entity. We're a 501c3. We're not allowed to run commercials. We do sponsorships from local businesses that basically it's a contribution, and then we're allowed to go on the air and give our thank yous. It's kind of like public radio, except that we're not a big national chain like NPR. We're local, 100%
Are we
local.
allowed, Bruce, to provide space, public space to an entity like this?
I don't want to answer it off the top of my head, but Commissioner Jones is right. We dealt with the Otterbein water tower, and there was an issue about how many persons had keys, and it
Yeah.
became problematic, and they had equipment on it, and we ended up, I think, Chris, didn't we do an agreement with them about how they could access that, those assets?
Yeah, but if I'm not mistaken, that kind of fell apart.
We did, all I can say to you, Commissioner Grossman, is in that scenario, we tried to work out an agreement Whether it came to fruition, I don't know, but Chris would know.
So what is the content that you put on these stations?
It's, first off, we do emergency broadcasts, so we do provide emergency services for the whole county. So if there was a catastrophe or, you know, the
Okay.
ED alert service and all that stuff. But we have people from within the community that come on, and we teach them how to be DJs, to be on the radio, and they contribute to us staying on the air. Our format's classic rock. That's what we play.
Okay, so you're a music station.
Yeah, we're music.
You're a music station with some DJs who are trying to get into the industry.
No,
Or
it's,
what is it,
it's,
who is it that you're talking about who's in an educational process?
well, the very nature of the station is an educational station. That's how it's licensed.
Okay, but you're basically playing music.
Yeah, we play music, but we also provide, you know, news, emergency
Do
services.
you,
and
do you do news spots? Do you have an
Oh, yeah.
opinion thing? Do you have a talk show format?
We don't do too much opinion stuff. We could, but we don't. We kind of
Well, I
stay
mean,
away
but
from
that's significant to me, because if you've got a particular persuasion or political bent, that affects whether I think that we as a public entity should be providing you with a forum to do that. There's no problem with you doing that.
I
But
mean, we can. I mean, if there was a politician that wanted airtime, certainly we would give it to them. But we haven't been approached.
Okay,
Yeah.
but basically, would you say fundamentally you're just a music station?
We're basically, we fill with music, yeah, because
And
we
what-
can't,
And what niche of music again are you?
it's classic rock.
Classic rock.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people that play classic rock, and you're just one of them.
Well, no, we're very different.
What's the classic rock thing? What's the genre?
What makes us different is we don't have 20 songs in a loop, like all the commercial stations do.
What do you have?
We have deep tracks, a lot of album cuts. We have like 20,000 songs in our library. So we're serving a passion, the music passionate people. That's who listens to us.
Okay,
Is the
so
people
what
who
is,
can't find this anywhere else.
what is the public purpose of this, Bruce? That we would be using this for a
I
private
don't
entity?
know, I would have to, evaluate whatever their mission statement is and figure out exactly what they are, although it sounds like they are a 501c3.
Yeah.
So, we'd have to have that information to evaluate.
Yeah, I guess, and so I don't know what I don't know yet. This is
Sure.
really intriguing to me. I love the fact that if there are people who are passionate about classic rock, that they have the opportunity to hear some really interesting music that they
Very
can't get
eccentric,
anywhere
yeah.
else. My question would, really come to, one that it's not yours to answer, but as I'm trying to wrap my head around your request, notwithstanding the fact that we need more information from our legal counsel to be able to, I think, constructively think about what you're asking of us. Is then I presume there are others that have bandwidth, who do similar types of things, maybe not classic rock, maybe it's, punk rock or something else, or swing music or something, then like how does that impact, not just in the single sense, but kind of,
We've opened up the door, if we
to
open up to
others.
you, to making it so that we cannot do something for you that we would close off for anybody else. We have to provide equal protection of the law, and so that's a question for me is, one, is there a legitimate public purpose for us providing a private entity, regardless of the fact you're a nonprofit? That's helpful, but it still is not, you're not a public entity. And you're not a-
Well, we are. We're considered to be a public charity by the IRS. Yeah, we
No,
are.
that's not really what I mean by public entity.
Okay.
So you're not a governmental entity. You're not somebody where we're providing a governmental service.
Right.
So now you're basically a private institution that is a nonprofit. I get it, you're a 501c3, I appreciate that. But now we're providing you with access to a public facility, which I presume, would you expect to be paying us for this?
Possibly. I mean, Hopefully it could be donated, but otherwise we could offer, you know, advertising, that sort of thing.
Regardless, so either you pay some nominal amount, or you're gonna seek this for free, and then we're gonna be opening ourselves up to lots of other people that may want, oh, such and such has got it, so we want it. And so I need to know from our legal director whether we're permitted to do this, under what scope, what type of, you know, basis that we would do this, if we do it at all. I really appreciate, what your passion is and what you're doing. I've never heard your station before, maybe I have unbeknownst to me, because I've listened down at that level of the dial on FM. So, is there anything else you'd like to tell us, and we'll let our staff take a look at your request?
Well, to address your concerns, there are no frequencies available. There's just none left. So I don't think in the future you would have much chance of anybody coming to you, because there's just nowhere to put any more radio stations. We are the only one in Warren County. We are your station. This is it. So that, and we're already in existence, but we just want to improve it.
How many listeners do you think you have?
We don't know, because we don't get it rated. We don't buy the ratings from Nielsen. But I know based on the phones and the emails, we have quite a few. But a lot of the people that listen always let us know, we wish we could hear you better. But we're limited to a silo that's only like 85 feet tall.
And you're 89.1 in Warren County?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so
Appreciate it.
much. I appreciate it.
We'll have our staff look into it and coordinate with you.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anything else?
Susan has something.
Yeah, Susan?
I just needed to seek approval to terminate a contract that you all entered in, on April of 2022. The board entered into an agreement with 4C for Children to provide ARPA funds to assist in increasing and retaining Type B child care providers through Jobs and Family Services. This program has had some difficulty producing measurable results, finding Type B providers, and it would be difficult for them to spend all of the funds that were awarded. So I would like to get approval of the board to terminate the contract and draw back the money that we've already provided to 4C.
How much money would come back to us?
We provided $486,000. We want to draw back $416,157.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions, Shannon?
No.
All right, want to make
That's
a
fine.
motion for that?
Do you need a motion, or you just need direction?
Maybe do a
What do we
motion
need?
just so I have it.
Want to make a motion on this? Okay,
To
let's make
terminate a
motion.
contract since you did.
We'll make a motion just for that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I move that we terminate the contract with 4C for Children, consistent with the details Susan has outlined.
I second that, but call roll call on that.
Mr. Grossman?
Yes?
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Okay, is there anything else? A motion to adjourn?
So moved?
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.